The most interesting thing to me, though, is that paid CTR on queries with no AI overviews are still down 32% over the same period.
The more complex you're offering and the more high value it is, the more this holds true. Like reducing CPC not only was not the goal in many cases, but it was doing the opposite to what you wanted.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Demand Decoded. Dan with you as always, joined by Phil in the studio today. And we're talking about why your PPC is declining and the fact it's probably not that something is wrong with your campaigns. Paid search is kind of declining across the board at the moment, like marketers are freaking out and the dashboards are all making it look like there is something fundamentally broken. And, you know, in today's episode, I suppose Phil and I are really just unpacking the real reasons behind that, thinking about whether paid search, you know, is it completely dead? Can you still actually optimize certain areas of it? Is it a channel worth even exploring anymore? What's happened? Why is everything red? And why does it seem like everything's broken?
And what do you do?
Yeah.
What to do? Yeah.
Before we get into the podcast today, here's a quick word from our sponsors, HubSpot. Most businesses think they know their customers. They have the data, the records, the history, but it's scattered across 3 teams and 4 systems, which means nobody can actually use it. HubSpot connects it all. Every interaction, every support ticket, every conversation into one platform every team can work from. So when sales talk to a customer, marketing already know the full story. And when you know more, you grow more. Check out HubSpot.com, the agentic customer platform for growing businesses.
PPC is kind of caught up in this maelstrom at the moment where the rules of nearly everything are being rewritten. You know, metrics that marketers have relied upon and trusted for years are, you know, doing really unexpected things, cratering in some respects, increasing in others, but not in the ways that they've tended to in the past. So it's a time of reckoning for lots of things, PPC included. However, I also think that often in a number of spheres, the impact of AI is actually healthy when it comes to the way B2B marketers think about channels and tactics and what they use and what they don't use, because it's actually had a forcing effect in the direction, in the favor of the buyer. And I hope that by the end of this discussion, not only have we sort of looked at some of the, you know, the circumstances, the reasons, and the courses of action you can take, but also sort of position PPC right for some listeners in terms of, is it the thing that you should be using or not? Yeah. If you are and you should, are you using it right? And, you know, what are the real paths to success that maybe this transition you know, can shine a light on? Yeah. So it's a really interesting topic, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's one that's like, obviously PPC has been covered. Well, we've covered it
to death.
quite a lot on this podcast, to be honest. But I think it's just the fact that everything seems to be going wrong for people right now. So the first thing I think to cover off is the real reason why, you know, your cost per clicks are up, but your clicks are actually down, and what the change means. And the change really here isn't something that's happened with Google's PPC algorithm. It's a human change in buyer behavior, in the way that buyers actually research and search ultimately. Like, gone are the days that somebody uses Google extensively, in most cases, to get their initial shortlist. Like, they are using AI tools to do that initial first step research for them.
Yep.
Of course, not across the entire board, which is why there's still some runway left in PPC, but a huge amount of that research phase for B2B buyers is moving into AI search, which means people aren't clicking ads as much. Like it is as simple as that.
Yeah, there's a few things going on, and you'll have a better handle on the numbers than me. So correct me, or where I go wrong here. But you've got, on the one hand, you've got AI overviews within Google themselves that are redefining what the search result is and what the experience for the user is. And you've got users who are performing some of what they used to do on Google in a variety of other non-Google platforms, search engines, chatbots. Google's still getting very, very high visits. There are still plenty of impressions out of there. But the mode of the buyer when they're on those search results is changing, as well as the content of them and the volume at which they're seen. And to your point, it's buyer behavior, and it isn't just like physical behavior, like what they do, what they click on. It's how they think about this part of their role and the process. So they can be on the same page as they were before, but their mindset for being there is different. And when that occurs, the effects are wide ranging and long lasting, and that's driving this sea of change in terms of data.
Well, we spoke about it in a previous podcast, which is what happens in marketing when things go wrong, right? And how to actually diagnose that. And this is one of those areas that we're diagnosing right now, which is our, leads from PPC are down, our cost per clicks are up, our clicks are down, like customer acquisition cost via this channel is higher than ever. Well, why is that? We can, look at our campaigns, we can break down the metrics, look at our ad score, look at the actual setup of the campaigns, how we're delivering ads, when we're delivering ads, like keyword types, negative keywords, everything that goes on in a PPC campaign. But we also need to look outside at the environment that's happening. And that's exactly what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a case of saying, we're not suggesting that those that are using PPC can or should turn it off. Right? A lot of businesses are incredibly successful in PPC or incredibly dependent on it as a channel, and it will not have gone away completely. And the cost per click, cost per lead generally trends up on a platform anyway. So that's not,
that's true.
that direction of travel is not a new thing. But what many will be seeing at the moment is, like a redrawing of the lines around CPC and CPA, and a very, very pressing need to take stock of PPC, optimize where possible, and I think the right place and the right approach to optimization might be different to the one that's been applied in the good times, and then also look at, well, how do we move with the buyer? What do we do differently, in order to prevent the decline in PPC becoming something worse for us as a business?
So you touched on AI overviews before, which was kind of the beginning of the downfall when it comes to click-through rates on Google, whether that be paid or organic. And some inspiration from this episode actually came from a webinar that Neil Patel run, and he was talking about similar things, the decline in click-through rates on paid search and organic search, and SEA Interactive are another one that did a really good study, and we can drop a link to that in the show notes on this episode. But what's really interesting is looking at like the devastating impact that AI overviews have had, because you would think that the impact might be less on queries that you're paying for, but actually the data here shows that paid CTR on queries where AI overview appears are down 68%, and
Massive.
That's from 19.7% to 6.3% based on June 2024 to September 2025. The most interesting thing to me, though, is that paid CTR on queries with no AI overviews are still down 32% over the same period. So whilst AI overviews, yeah, of course, they are causing a huge disruption, down 68% when they are present. Even when they're not present, click-through rate is still down 32%.
Yeah, which is that, it isn't just that the AI overview replaces, the thing that would have led to the click before. It's the whole application of Google within the buyer journey and process. I find it all fascinating, and it makes me think. We know that there's a bias when, in terms of where AI overviews do appear, then it's more on informational queries, and there's overlap, and there's all sorts of crossover. But generally speaking, you'll see AI overviews more on informational queries than on commercial queries. And certainly within a B2B context, paying to appear on informational queries, isn't ever a sound strategy. So it's almost surprising to me that they can drop by that much. It just goes to show how many people were spending their budget there, to have that big an impact. And then, of course, when you move to the places where there are no AI overviews, that's typically thought of as being the more commercial space, where there's like more remainder in terms of opportunity. And the fact that they've driven that down by 32% already is really cause for concern. You've got to stop and think about that, because it means that even paying to be, in front of your high intent buyer when they're in market and they're using a commercial query, could be seeing that kind of depression on the click-through rate that you're getting. So these are big changes that are dramatic, to say the least, and like across the board, which is so interesting.
So there is obviously cause for concern when we see these big numbers going down, clicks, click-through rates, etc. But they were never typically the right metric to chase anyway.
Correct.
Right? We could have a terrible click-through rate, but a really high conversion rate on a particular campaign or ad set. And that might actually be extremely beneficial for us as a business from a pipeline or, closed won perspective. So it's worth anchoring ourselves in like that reality that actually, whilst there might be inevitably some decline in terms of impressions, maybe not so much impressions, but clicks and click-through rates especially, if you're still optimizing for conversions, for high intent conversions from your ads, then there might still be areas where you can divert more budget to on those campaigns that are converting more effectively, even if you're continuing to lose clicks and reduce click-through rate. If you're still getting conversions, that is okay.
This is where I find it really interesting, because what you're saying there is essentially that the impact of lost clicks and lost click-through rate is increased cost per click, ultimately. And by definition, that translates to increased cost per conversion and cost to acquire a customer. In B2B, conversion has always been the name of the game. Volume at the top of that funnel, impressions, clicks, are a vanity metric, if that. They are polar opposite, really, to what you need to be driving as a business. And so the framing of this as we may be going through a change, which means there are far fewer clicks and the click-through rate is lower, and all these metrics are declining. But not only was it click conversions that we were after all along, but conversions following clicks from these changed channels are higher value, convert more into conversations and pipeline. Then it's an example of AI doing this thing that I said at the start, which is actually really sort of almost pushing B2B marketers in the right direction, which is to focus on generating business. Ironically, this is the irony, that there are degrees to this, but the more complex you're offering and the more high value it is, the more this holds true. Like reducing CPC, not only was not the goal in many cases, but it was doing the opposite to what you wanted.
Yeah.
Increasing CPC is sometimes what you want to be doing within PPC in a B2B context, because you're trying to produce high value conversions.
Yeah.
You're not chasing volume. You're trying to optimize for the best placements, the best search results, the best buyers that become pipeline. And so if you've got a transactional offering and you've got experience of the high volume side of this, then yes, you will be optimizing your campaigns for maximized budget, in a CPC sense. But B2B doesn't operate like that for the most part, and trying to continue to optimize your campaigns in a campaign performance sense, whilst we go through this sort of massive downward trend, will just amplify the frustration and the pain of it all. But if you move your attention to what your business needs, what your business KPIs are, then you can take a very different look at the landscape within PPC and outside, and come up with plays that leverage what's happening now.
Yeah. All right, let me try and explain what I've just got written down here, which is when we think about return on ad spend, that is one metric in itself, because that can go up or down and fluctuate, but it doesn't necessarily reflect what's actually happening in the business and what's going on at the bottom line.
Yep.
Customer acquisition cost is closer to that. But the interesting thing here is it is possible to have a higher spend on ads, but actually reduce customer acquisition cost by having an increased conversion rate.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's a lot of, I feel like I've used a lot of marketing jargon there, but
rammed full of them, that was. But you're dead right. ROAS is often the focal point of, the PPC conversation. But it's not the one that's necessarily correlated with what you're trying to drive. If you increase conversion rate, then by definition you are reducing cost to acquire a customer and actually improving your ROAS. These things are connected ultimately, and as you depress on one, you can increase the other. But what you press on to create improvements can have the desired consequence or unintended consequences. But that, broadly speaking, within B2B is the sort of mindset, which is to say it's conversion rate that will have the largest impact. It's the same as we've always said, if you work from pipeline backwards and you've got your levers, it's the lever within the PPC landscape that will have the biggest amplifying effect on your campaign performance. And it will potentially, if the volume is there, it can dwarf the effect of other micro adjustments in keyword matching and bidding styles and so on and so forth.
I just wanted to take a quick break in this episode to tell you about a podcast that's essential for understanding how AI is reshaping marketing. The Next Wave, hosted by Matt Wolf and Nathan Lands from the HubSpot Podcast Network. They consistently break down the latest AI developments and what they actually mean for the way that you do business. In one episode, they dive into whether 2026 is the year AI agents become truly indispensable, covering the explosions of new AI models, how they're getting smarter and cheaper, and why companies are racing to build integrated, emotionally aware agents. If you're not keeping up with how fast AI is moving, your business is already falling behind. The Next Wave, available wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening to this right now, you're probably doing what every other B2B marketer is doing, asking, how do I get my brand cited in ChatGPT? How do I show up in Gemini, Perplexity, Claude? And at Blend, we help you do exactly that. We engineer visibility in AI search for B2B companies. We build the content, implement the technical optimization, and track your performance across every major AI platform. So when buyers are researching solutions like yours, your brand gets recommended. We know how to engineer visibility in AI search because we built a framework and proved it on ourselves first. And this took months of experimentation, but in the end it delivered 470 high-value prompt appearances, 80% citation rate across prompts, and 250% more AI-sourced leads. we proved the framework, and now we're starting to roll it out across customers who are seeing similar results. So if you want to dominate AI search in your category, visit blendb2b.com to learn more about our AI search services.
Conversion rate is absolutely the thing to do because it has the dual benefits. It has the dual benefit of decreasing the cost to acquire a customer and improving the campaign performance, without you actually touching it. So it's a thing to have your eyes on all the time.
Yeah. So I think to give some advice about where to reinvest or how to go about navigating all of these red candles in your PPC report is optimize on conversion to start with, and that might be campaign conversion actually in your ads and diverting budget into the highest converting campaigns to start with, but also looking at website and landing page quality and how you can increase conversion there. And it might be actually, well, let's take away some budget from these campaigns that are performing terribly from a conversion perspective and put that into increasing conversion rates on our landing pages.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the secret, and it's no secret, is that landing page conversion rate is the thing.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. Now, if you're operating PPC as a B2B organization at a level where you can't even really make the case for focusing budget and energy on landing page, optimization, then I suspect that maybe there's an argument for not doing PPC at all, because if the only thing you've got in your playbook is adjust the campaign, perform things, then maybe it's not the right channel for your proposition and your offering. But if you've been utilizing it at some sort of scale, then checking your landing page conversion rate against even the benchmarks, which are pretty low, is the first point. It's the first thing to do. And if you increase it, you increase your quality score, you increase your ROAS, you increase every metric that you want to increase, and you lower cost to acquire customers. So really, really key.
Yeah. So that's kind of what to do with inside your Google ad spend or Microsoft ad spend, whatever it might be. But at the same time, we do have to be thinking that, what happens in 5 to 10 years? What is search in 5 to 10 years?
Quite.
It's scary to think about the huge change. And I suppose the way that we can start to protect ourselves against that is by starting to be chosen before people ever get to search in the first place. How do you enter the shortlist for buyers in your market before they ever even thought about going to Google search in the first place?
Yeah, it's no longer how do you show up in search, it's how do you show up in research.
Oh, I like that. Yes, that's good.
It's about being present and part of that platform where they're asking long form questions, rich with personal context, building projects and apps for themselves to do this stuff automatically, all of which is pulling in content from all across the web, from deep within Google's index and others, optimizing for relevance and proximity to the needs of the person asking. It's the research process, and becoming a part, a presence within that is the way to de-risk ultimately the potential continued disruption and change to search as we know it, PPC, and move with the times.
Yeah, and I think this spans two areas, because we've got, where are the searchers now searching? So how do we, we're talking about AEO basically.
Absolutely.
How do we actually optimize large language models to mention us and cite our website more often? Marketing Against the Grain have posted some really good podcasts recently on AEO. They had Asia Frost back on to talk about what's going on now, and like different sources and things. And they were talking about the influence of YouTube on Gemini in particular.
Yes.
And well, I know you saw this in a report you just did, right? Which was it's increasingly a cited source of information on particularly Gemini, but it's creeping in on some other models as well. And we need to start actually thinking about, how do we double down on being mentioned in videos? It could be an influencer's video, it could be our own brand's video that we create, but how do we actually weave in the topics that we want to be mentioned on? Because that's almost a twofold, right? Because we've still got people consuming loads of video content. Like we get leads every single month from our YouTube videos, and they're just consuming them. That's not via AI, but you've got this new cohort coming in now, which are actually using, AI is using YouTube as a cited source of information that the researchers who are searching are now like consuming that as well, just via a different medium.
Yeah, you touched on a really interesting point as well, which is the combination of your brand and the topic. You can have a ton of content, ton of YouTube videos, and be nowhere in specific sort of prompt landscapes if you're not pairing the topic that's of interest to the user, and presumably to user, with your branded content platforms and channels, plus influencers and people in your space. So it's really interesting that it's that intersection that's necessary, and that's what's increased the scale of this opportunity. It's still really early days, and as you said, I was doing a report recently where YouTube was presented as one of the most frequently cited domains. The content on YouTube was coming through in these results. But even so, what you see quite often is that it's a nascent landscape. Publishers with little to no authority on your subject might be getting the lion's share of citations simply because they've got content, often a listicle on the topic that's being searched. So there are lots of opportunities out there to, become prominently cited, displace some of the incumbent sources of information, using your expertise, using your knowledge of that subject area. It's a really interesting time for that.
Yeah, I mean, that allows you to build your brand at the same time via like video, which doing video in itself unlocks so many other potentials for like being a fantastic brand in different channels and actually publishing content in different ways in different mediums. So doing YouTube like videos, I feel like I've said it for a couple of years, maybe even on the podcast, that I do think YouTube for B2B is going to become more and more important, as it already is becoming. The fact that it's being used so often as a cited source on large language models, I think just helps that even more. But I suppose the point here is to understand the AEO landscape for your business in particular. What kind of prompts, you can go back and watch our old episodes on how to create an AEO strategy is probably a good one, because you actually need to understand how to curate prompts and synthesize prompts that would sound like your buyer based on ICP information, and then understand what are the content types that are now being cited as the source of information. Now, that might be out of your control to actually create content like that, but then how do you actually go about getting surfaced in those? Reddit, for example, one they mentioned on Marketing Against the Grain being a huge source of citations in ChatGPT. Well, what's your community strategy? That's going to become a more prominent role in B2B marketing. And this is all just things shifting, right? We might have less emphasis on our PPC manager, and we might have a community manager instead, because that is just the way that buyer behavior is shifting. And we just need to shift our strategy and resource with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Never-ending story, really, in terms of marketers having to move with the times, and we're a lucky bunch in some respects, because we tend to be, I don't believe anybody is forever rooted in an area like PPC or SEO. the mindset, the adaptability that enabled somebody to learn that can
Yeah.
they can use to learn this.
Yeah.
So no one should get left behind by this necessarily, but there will be, like you say, the stock will go up in some roles and in new roles, and stock will go down in others over time on average.
One thing we haven't touched on is Performance Max, which
Mm-hmm.
is relevant to this topic, of course, because it's Google's fairly newish way of displaying ads in AI overview. So you turn on Performance Max campaign and you're basically kind of giving the keys to Google and saying, all right, here's my campaign, show it wherever you think is relevant. I would say it's the equivalent of turning on broad match keywords. So there's a lot of risk in there, of course, because Google is ultimately trying to show your ads to as many people as possible in a wide variety of searches, queries, whatever you call it. And they might not be the right people to actually buy from you. So big warning there. But there are signs, there is data that click-through rates on Performance Max ads are increasingly higher than those outside of the AI overview box.
Right.
And I've seen a couple of studies around Performance Max when integrated with CRM. So the trouble is with Performance Max, because it's just trying to like go blah with your brand and like put it absolutely everywhere, equivalent to, broad match keywords, you have to find a way to really tighten that up. And the only way to get a good tightening of that is to integrate it with your CRM to give it data on the conversion so it understands the right placement and the right people to actually serve these ads to.
Yep.
And you need large quantities of data in order to actually teach it that. So for the most part, Performance Max have been terrible, like for pretty much everyone.
It's it's bittersweet, isn't it? Because I mean, the best way to train all bidding is CRM data in Google, no doubt about it. Passing some sort of signal back within the 90-day window that Google allows, is better than anything else you can do for optimizing bidding algorithmically. PMax, obviously the fact that PMax is the way that they're allowing you into Google AI overviews at the moment, but while taking away your control is unfortunate because broadly speaking, PMax hasn't been the road to success for B2B PPC. Tighter control and management, single keyword ad groups, almost no phrase match or exact match, phrase match or broad match, nearly all exact match. Very, very, very tightly controlled campaigns focused on, your ideal audience and managed carefully has been the way to get results. And PMax, doesn't always fail per se, but it doesn't give you the ability to control and tailor it. So there's those challenges. The need to adopt PMax to get into AI overviews will be a challenge, and the fact that in order to guide it using CRM data, you've got to be at that volume level, which comes back to my earlier point, which is if you don't have the volume of conversions to, give you the confidence to optimize landing page experience or the confidence to connect CRM data to Google, then like maybe now is not the right time for Google for this channel. But of course, it's of interest to us all to see what ads within AI overviews and later ChatGPT, do for B2Bs in this new research paradigm.
Yeah, well, ChatGPT ads are the next thing to come, right? They are out right now in beta in the US, available for every US business to go and set up and validate. We've been waiting about a week, I think, to be valid. Like that's normal. Like it even pops up with a message that validation is going to take ages, basically, because the demand is so high. But oh my god, I am so excited to get in there. And do you know what gets me with ChatGPT ads? It's not even the fact that I think they're necessarily going to perform amazingly as an ad. It's the data, because we haven't had any data from any large language model about volumes on prompts or topics, and this is the breakthrough that will give us the impression data, the click-through data, Again, on Marketing Against the Grain, Kieran Flanagan was talking about the discrepancy between impressions and clicks, and the fact that he, based on kind of reverse engineering, because HubSpot were an alpha tester, I suppose, of ChatGPT ads, that 100 impressions is about the equivalent to 1 click. In the like traditional sense and the new sense, because so many people will see your brand and not click, but navigate to your website elsewhere, that, gone are the days, and we're kind of digressing here, but gone are the days of optimizing for clicks. We're optimizing for mentions.
Yeah, you're optimizing for mentions, you're optimizing for visits via any journey, not the direct click journey, but visits, ultimately, and then conversion rate. But it's no longer this waterfall of spend here, measure the conversion rate, directly, and then evaluate there. It's all coming in the round. So much more happening in the dark. Trackability of this will be, as problematic as anything that we've known recently. Getting that data from ChatGPT will be illuminating, to say the very least. But you've got to optimize for the buyer that will, ultimately do this work in tools that you can't aggressively penetrate and understand, monitor, and make their own way to you ultimately, which is the way we've been going to market and advising customers for quite some time. But it's a big shift, and it's a hard shift, because we're, as a society, we're very, very comfortable with measurable performance marketing.
Yeah, it's hard to, go into Google Analytics, go into HubSpot and look at website traffic data at the moment. It's actually slightly heartbreaking.
Yeah, because so much work's gone into, getting that where it is. And even though, you and I, we're in a fortunate position, right? We can rationalize and say to ourselves, well, we know why it's declining. We know that while it's declining, we're not necessarily seeing the same decline in the things that matter. So it's okay. But still, those coloured bars.
I think it's because you've looked at, traffic data for so long, right, as a signal. That's like,
it's just
a shame.
Yeah, when that bottoms out, it'll be a sad day.
Yeah, it is a sad day. I think, for me, what's really important right now, well, I loved your phrase earlier. It's about being present in research, not search.
Yeah.
And that is totally right, because I think the teams that seem to be doing the best right now aren't the ones just like spending more and more blindly because metrics are decreasing, but they are diversifying their strategy to be present earlier in the buyer journey and trusted by AI and therefore trusted by buyers.
Yeah, absolutely. On the subject of PPC specifically, I think PPC is a fantastic channel, a fantastic, invention of man, and a really great channel for marketers, just so often used wrong in the B2B context because of the overwhelming B2C element within the training material, within the advice from platforms, within the the data and metrics that we get. I said it a long time ago that Apple's course on PPC was the best for B2B marketers, because it was the polar opposite of what you would hear from Google or Bing about what matters and what you optimize for. But that's an old story. But PPC has been great, probably will continue to be great if used correctly, but it's part of a really fascinating spectrum now where there is more interplay than before. PPC bleeds into AI overviews, bleeds into AI content strategy, bleeds into the whole research behavior of the buyer and the new way of generating visits and business. So it's got to be taken in the whole, and that's a really exciting opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, I think that's enough on that topic. That's PPC covered. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode of Demand Decoded. We will catch you next time. Bye, everyone.
See you.
Before you go, if all you can think about right now is AI search and how buyers are using it to find products in your category, we should talk. At Blend, we've built a proven framework for answer engine optimization. We tested it on ourselves first and saw 470 high-value prompt appearances, 80% citation rate, and a whopping 250% increase in AI source leads. That's real high-intent leads who are finding us through AI search. We've since rolled it out to dozens of clients who are now seeing similar results. Our AI service engineers your visibility in ChatGPT, Perplexity, AI mode, Gemini through structured content, schema markup, and continuous optimization, and measurement through our partner Scrunch. If you want to show up when your buyers are asking AI tools for recommendations in your category, find out more about our AEO services at blendb2b.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.